Hello, welcome to another edition of Arizona Wildcats Insiders Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hutchison. And again, we are getting closer to Arizona football season kicking off on August 30th against Hawaii in Arizona. Arizona opens up its season against the Rainbow Warriors and has its first 3 games at home in year 2 of the Brett Brennan era, meaning we are getting very close. Training camp is right around the corner, starting next week. Media day is on the 29th, coming up on Tuesday. So things are starting to get ramped up for year 2 underneath Brett Brennan as they try to right some wrongs from the previous season. Brennan brought in new coaches on the coaching staff, a new offensive coordinator, Seth Dagey, who came from Marshall and had the 20th ranked rushing offense in the country, despite being a part of the Mike Leach air raid coaching tree. Seth Dagey is a guy that loves up-tempo offense, loves to pass, but also meets the needs of the roster and is able to adjust on the fly. Terrific young offense coordinator that has come to Arizona. Defensive side of the ball, Danny Gonzalez takes over after serving last year as the linebacking coach. He takes over as the head defense coordinator. Dwayne Aquina had dealt with a lot of injuries at Arizona last year and started to stockpile. By the end of the season, a lot of walk-ons and third-string players were playing, and it led to some defensive woes. So there was a replacement there with Danny Gonzalez taking over. Gonzalez coming from New Mexico as a former head coach there. Before that, he was previously at Arizona State as a defense coordinator and at San Diego State as a defensive coordinator under Rocky Lawn. So he has a great coaching tree in terms of defensive minds that he has worked with. So that should be interesting for Arizona. Joe Salavea on the defensive side of the football, bringing him in to shore up that defensive line to get even more in-depth recruiting in the Polynesian and Samoan community and getting more studs out of there. Joe Salavea has been a massive help on the recruiting front for Arizona, just a dynamic recruiter, a great coach, and a guy that has been in position to be an assistant defense coordinator, co-defense coordinator, I should say, and in a position where other programs are going to look at him. He's worked at Oregon and Miami and Washington State and has succeeded everywhere he's gone, even worked 1 year at Arizona. Then you look at Josh Miller on the offensive side of the ball, new tight ends coach. Kind of shocked that they made that change, given that Matt Atkins was Brett Brennan's guy, young up-and-coming tight ends coach, but a change was made there. So a lot of changes on the staff. Obviously, Arizona has brought in a lot of new faces on the roster in terms of the transfer portal and incoming recruits. But I want to talk about last season real quick as we look back at last year, getting ready for this year. Obviously, it was an underwhelming season, very disappointing season, finishing 4-8 after starting the year number 21 in the preseason AP poll and having high expectations to finish in the top 4, top 5 in the Big 12. Some people had them winning the Big 12. I think they did get one first-place vote from the media last season. This year, the Big 12 did not have a media poll. So it was underwhelming. You had no Fafita. You had a star player in Tetaroa McMillan. You had a lot of good returning players on defense. And, offensively, you thought you were going to have some things clicking with the Dino Babers system, and everything just kind of fell apart. But was it all as bad as Arizona fans think? Was it all dependent on the head coach, Brett Brennan? Was it all no Fafita? And I'm here to say it wasn't as bad as what Arizona fans think. And I know Arizona fans aren't going to like that, but the reality is last year's football team was very close to making a bowl game. I know they got blown out in a lot of different games, but you look at 6-6, and that is a bold season. Would it have been underwhelming compared to the expectations? Without a doubt. I don't think you can overlook how underwhelming of a season it was, but it wasn't a horrific season. I think when fans are disappointed like that last year and you're seeing your team get blown out at the end of the year and you're losing 7 out of your last 8 games, everybody was quick to say, let's fire the coach, let's move on. That's not going to happen. One, Arizona's dealing with an athletic deficit that they're overcoming right now. 2, is his first year on the job at Arizona after coming over from San Jose State. And 3, he was a hire that the alumni, the boosters, and former players all got behind and still support very strongly, believe it or not. A lot of boosters love Brett Brennan. A lot of alumni love Brett Brennan. A lot of former football players love Brett Brennan. Now, does he need to prove some things in year 2? Without a doubt. You can't have another repeat performance for sure and not be on the hot seat. Arizona started behind the 8 ball. One, they were going through camp trying to get everybody to stay on the roster. That's not an easy task. I don't know if you've ever been in management. I don't know if you've ever been in a leadership role, but when you're trying to convince people to stay, knowing darn well that other companies and organizations are going after them, it's a difficult thing, especially when you weren't the one that hired them or you weren't the one recruiting them. Brett Brennan and his coaching staff had to win over every single player on this roster, and they were able to do that and save most of the roster despite tampering outside noise and former coaches trying to get their players over with them to other organizations and other programs. That didn't happen. They lost some, but kept the vast majority in core. And that is a testimony to Brett Brennan and his coaching staff in terms of how they're able to build a family environment at Arizona and gain the trust of the players so quickly. 2, as you geared up for training camp last year, Raymond Polito was nowhere to be found on the field. During spring ball, he was in and out of the transfer portal. He decided to come back. During training camp, he wasn't there. Nobody knew the status of Raymond Polito besides Arizona's coaching staff, obviously. He was projected to be the starting left tackle. You're talking about a guy that was a high 4-star recruit that some might consider a 5-star recruit that was once committed to Alabama. It was 6 foot 6'6", 6'8", somewhere in that range, 334 pounds of pure freaking muscle. The guy was a monster. The guy was a beast, and he was projected to be a second-year player in the starting lineup at left tackle. As we got closer to the start of the season, Brett Brennan announced to the media that he is no longer on the football team, and he would not be transferring, just he would be at the University of Arizona getting his degree, but no longer playing football. Now, was that a personal decision? I think so, probably. I'm shocked that he didn't transfer, but you're starting behind the 8 ball, missing a guy that could have been an all-conference left tackle for Arizona. So that's number 1. Number 2 is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt came in. He's a stud running back from New Mexico. Danny Gonzalez had a great relationship with him. Alonzo Carter built a great relationship with him. You're able to win him over in a massive recruiting battle against Ole Miss and other schools. He has a heck of a first game against New Mexico, just tearing up his old team. And then all of a sudden, some people make some phone calls to the NCAA, and I think you guys know who, and the NCAA looks into his eligibility again. And so Arizona has to send him out, waiting week after week after week, hoping that they'll start back and come back. And at the end of the day, he never did. By week 8 or 9, it was kind of clear to Arizona he wasn't going to be eligible. So he was unable to participate, although he participated in practice and was able to. He was helping on the practice squad, getting the team better, getting himself better, and now he's in the position in the NFL draft that he was selected in. But you're missing a star player. You're missing your second best offensive weapon behind Tetairoa McMillan. And outside of that, no offense to everybody else in the running back room last year, that was a massive drop-off. You're expecting Quali Conley to be the number 2 back, which would have been a very good number 2 back, and all of a sudden he has to take on the starting role. And then number 3, the offensive scheme. Let's be honest, Dino Babers did not have a great offensive scheme for Arizona. It was very colossal. It was very, stuck in the past and very stubborn. You saw the same thing week in and week out, and it didn't work. But those 2 big losses at the start of the year put Arizona behind the 8 ball. Despite that, they started off 3-1. But after the fast start against New Mexico, we scored 61 points. Arizona's offense averaged less than 19 per game the rest of the way. So not having Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was a huge deficit to Arizona. Not having Raymond Polito was a huge blow to Arizona. And the line got hurt, So everybody got banged up. Offensively, defensively, it was a living hell for Arizona's coaching staff and training staff. Yet, they were close against Texas Tech. They were close against West Virginia. In games where they almost came back and won. If they're able to hold on to those 2 wins, guess what? They're going bowling, people. That's a bowl game. And if you have those 2 players, you definitely beat those teams. You definitely beat Texas Tech with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. You definitely beat West Virginia with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and Raymond Polito. And Arizona's in a bowl game. And maybe the BYU game and Kansas State game are closer. Remember, it was close at half, and then it got away from Arizona. So you never know what the result could have been. I think realistically they could have gone 7-5 if they had those 2 players back and some things rolled their way. And all of a sudden, Arizona's in like a Vegas Bowl or LA Bowl. Now, would it have been disappointing after where they were projected at the start of the year? without a doubt. Again, you can't overlook that. But things were not as bad as Arizona fans think, and they need to give Brett Brennan and this coaching staff another opportunity to show why they will get the program moving in the right direction.